Hello.
Thank you everyone. Hi, I'm Benjamin from ETABS, and I will be joined virtually by my lovely Susan Collicott. So I'm not travelling all the way from the US today for this. But in introduction to what we're going to just talk about, firstly we're going to look at the challenges of reporting, which obviously is something that's quite topical for most, if not all research companies. We're jumping into a little quant now from AI and quant. Then we'll sort of see what automation can look like when it's done properly and fully. And then we'll have this case study from Susan from Escalent in the US, and then sort of summarise with some strategic benefits of automation. So, excuse the Americanism, hand posting, here we might call it hand typing. So what are the typical challenges that we come across when speaking with researchers and their manual reporting processes and experiences? And by far the most frustration comes with manual copying and pasting or typing numbers. It takes time, a lot of effort. It's a huge distraction for researchers who actually they're desperately trying to carve time in their day, if not night, to do more analysis and find insights for their clients and stakeholders. And as with anything manual, it's prone to error. When you've been entering hundreds of numbers by hand, the chance of introducing typos obviously will increase. And the same is true when copying and pasting back and forth between Excel and PowerPoint. You're tired and you point to the wrong row or column, pull that in, we've all been there and done that. Let's be honest. And just because field work is running later than expected, it doesn't mean that the client deliverable deadline automatically gets extended in return. You know, the client says, no, you promised it to me by this time, this date. And it's not my problem if your field work isn't complete on time. So when you've got no choice but to only begin your reporting once field work is complete and the final data are available, you're left with very little time before your promised deadline is approaching. And this often means late nights and long weekends, desperately using every free moment that you may have to plug in those numbers, format the final reports and write analysis, and that's often involving a lot of fiddly reformatting, moving indicators, brand logos, and all the rest. So, what do we do? So those are just some of the challenges of manual reporting. But perhaps you're past that stage and have tried implementing some method of automation. Automated charting is not new. Nowadays, getting charts generated automatically is fairly common and often taken for granted. But most options out there aren't actually that flexible. Sometimes you'll have a bright spark on the team who will create an Excel macro to run off a bunch of charts. But a macro, while good at what it does, isn't perfect. Once it's made, it's like concrete. Either use it as it is or smash it to pieces and start again. If the expected data structure changes, or even if the client wants something adjusted in the formatting, that macro simply has to be recreated. And if we just go back to the initial speaker from Zappi, when he was talking about Henry Ford, if it's black, it's fine. But any variation you might want on that customization is going to mess the equilibrium. And that's what happens with if you like a homemade, because you've always got this question of, do we build it ourselves or do we buy it? And if you build it yourselves, it's going to be built with a more rigid set of parameters than perhaps if you buy something generic that is taking into account all sorts of different possibilities and permutations. Maybe you have an online analysis tool that offers rendering of analyses into PowerPoint charts, usually more simplified ones. And that's very sweet, but then you're still left with a lot of fiddling to get that final report completed. Maybe the charts are given to you as images that can't be edited, and that's not very helpful. And you're probably somewhat limited with the chart types, the number of charts or objects on the slide that can be filled in there, or restricted when handling changing conditions. Anyone familiar with that? Okay. So the optimum solution for automating market research and insights reporting should firstly be a system that can read in any typical crosstabs, SPSS files, or even APIs into other systems, without having to ask data processing to make any customized adjustments each time. It should be able to handle variance in trackers or multi-market studies without much fuss. Change happens, so we have to be able to handle that. Handling different brand lists or numbers of brands across waves, markets or segments. Here we've got Diet Coke, and on the continent it's Coca-Cola Light, but actually we're talking about the same thing. Can the automation handle those subtleties? Can we show or calculate significance and stat testing, deal with low base conditions, or even write condition-based analysis text, perhaps even venturing into AI to generate that? And automatically handle brand logos or the placement of indicators, all those very fiddly things. So if the solution can natively understand the actual language of market research, data, and our industry's unique reporting needs, then so much more detail can be automated. This is ideal for trackers, continuous studies, multi-market reports, repetitive customer sat, employee satisfaction studies, concept ad testing, and even for some ad hoc projects. So we're talking about automating client-ready deliverables and reports with every level of detail fully automated, so that the researchers and analysts can then concentrate on the analysis itself and add more value to the project, and perhaps offer more to their clients. So, just to explain what our model is, and I'm not going to go into any demonstration that you can come to meet me later on if you like at the booth in the sponsors room. But our principle is that we start back to front. So we're not talking about, okay, you want me to automate some charts, which chart would you like, and where's the data coming from? We actually say, okay, you already have a presentation that you're committed to with your client. In fact, the client signed it off. So why would you want to start creating some curveballs there? So let's just pick up with the presentation deck. Let's call that our template, if you like, the shell. Let's start off with that the client's already dictated that and decided that's how I want my deliverables. And then let's go back to the data and make the data fit into that presentation. That's what we call pulling, rather than sort of pushing a bunch of charts out there. So the idea being that you can have your template over there on the left, you can have your standard crosstabs, any number of those, anyway you might want, in various formats perhaps. You might have trend data in one place, you may have benchmark data in another, and so on. And then pull that into that template, like a mail merge, and essentially then end up with these populated slides. So that's the paradigm that we believe that really should be in the line of sight for optimal automation. So that's my introduction to the idea. Let's just hear now from Susan.
I'm Susan Collicott. I'm an information designer for the marketing research firm Escalent Co., located in Livonia, Michigan. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you very briefly about the success that Escalent has had using ETAP software for reporting of tracking studies, big and small, and not necessarily tracking studies. I started using ETABs back in 2010 for a large automotive tracking study. Up to that point, we had been creating our charts and tables in Excel and then linking them back to PowerPoint for the presentation. We used a lot of conditional formatting, a lot of formulas, and a lot of manual work. And did I mention there were 300 reports? We had then moved all of that reporting into ETABs. And what ETABs did for us was they streamlined it. It made reporting more accurate. It made it faster. And it made us able to turn around and give those reports to research in a more timely manner. And then research was able to not have to check every single 300 reports. They could track just a couple. And once they realized that our tagging was good, they didn't really have to check very much more. With ETABs, we've been able to also set up slides, an individual slide. And let's say I wanted it to expand and contract, the table to expand and contract, the chart to expand and contract, based on the number of competitors I wanted to report, like 13, or as few as 3. And with the use of object flow, we're able then to take that chart and the tables and center them on the page when there isn't the average of 10 competitors that we usually have. We're also able to use ETABs to put significance testing in. And I know that for some of us, there's a lot of significance testing. It's, well, significant. So we're able to put in circles and squares, arrows up and down, plus, minuses, and that all can be done through the ETABS process. The software also allows us to sort data and attributes, which is also a big plus. Now, custom content can be individual slides that are only used for certain regions, certain segments. You don't want them for every report, and you're able to set those up and move them in and out very nicely with the use of ETABS. Images? I'm glad you asked. Big, small, in between, icons, country flags, they can all be placed into your documentation through the use of ETABS. For some reporting, you have repeating slides, and that's, you may make a slide or two or three, and additional slides for different segments are going to look exactly like them. You're going to have them all in the same report, but you don't want to make them 5 times, 10 times each for each of those slides. You want them to repeat. The only thing that'll be different is the data, the significance testing, the attribute name, maybe an image. And you can do this through the use of modeling in ETABS very successfully. We also use ETABS, as I mentioned, for simpler projects. It doesn't have to be big or anything like this. But the bonus for us has been these big tracking studies, where if you're copying and pasting data in and hand entering sig testing, or you're hand entering all the numbers, you're going to have errors. And what ETABS helps you to avoid is a lot of that error, tedious manual processing. So while we're here, let me just show you a few slides on reports that we've done here successfully. And now you remember the big tracking study I mentioned to you. This is one of the slides. And you'll notice that right now there's a chart, a reporting brand, and 10 competitors. In this particular slide, I can have up to 13, but I can also have as few as 4. You'll notice down here in the memo section of the slide where it says share of segment registrations estimate. Watch that space, because we're going to go move to the next slide, which is the same slide. It's one slide we built to expand and contract. So you can see in this slide, we have a reporting brand and 4 competitors. And if we look down in the memo section, that registration row, it's gone because we used rules to eliminate it where it wasn't wanted. You'll also notice we have significance testing, some up-down arrows, some squares, and that's all put in through the process of using ETABS. If I move on to my next slide, this is a trending slide. We have a table at the bottom. Again, we've set it up for a maximum of 13. We're showing 10 here. But again, it's going to expand and contract based on how much we're reporting. Also, the legend up at the top of the chart will do the same. If you'll notice competitor 7 here, and we look at competitor 7 in the legend, and it has a square and an arrow. If I hover over here on this square and arrow, you'll see that it's competitor 7. So you can use ETABS to set all that up so it lines up and it matches. You will see too, again, our significance testing is significant, and there's a lot going on here. Again, time saved by using ETABS. Now for something different. And you'll recall perhaps earlier in my talk that we talked about building slides and repeating them. When I got this particular report, there were 102 slides. And I was looking at that and going, nah. If they were going to remove one of the reporting periods or add a reporting period in, I was going to have to repeat that process 102 times. I knew there was a better way. I knew it was through ETABS. I knew it was through modeling. So what I was able to do was make 2 slides. One for commercial, as we see here, one for residential, as we see here. If you'll notice up in the upper right-hand corner, there's some text here. It says renew. It's the same on the second slide. Again, we tag to that. We set up the rules. We set up the constants within ETABS. And just these 2 slides, we were able to repeat 102 slides with all the data and is significance testing. As you can see in both slides, we have significance testing here with the triangles, and ETABS saved us a boatload of time, and any changes to the slide, we weren't going to have to do 102 times. And with our last slide, it looks a little different. This we call our football slide. And it's actually two charts built on top of each other. The color matte portion is the bottom chart. The top chart is the little footballs, the symbols with the appropriate city abbreviation in them. By using equations within ETABS, we're able to place all those little footballs in the appropriate spot amongst below average, on par with average, or above average. And it has the correct city abbreviation inside it. And it lines up with whatever the appropriate attribute is. The blue line that you see to your right also moves based on the data. And again, this is equations and calculations done within ETABS. As you can see, ETABS is a pretty dynamic piece of software. And I'm really happy that our Big Tracking Studies is using it. ETABS is constantly evolving. It's an evolving piece of software. And with that, things improve. So when I get done with a large tracking study, what I like to do is go through it at the end and say what worked, what didn't work, what could possibly be better at the end, so that our reporting goes even smoother than it has been before. So I'm always looking for the better way, and ETABS usually has a way for me to do it. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm so glad that you were with me today and that you took a little walk, a little foray through the world of ETABS. And I thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you, Susan. Sorry for blatant advertising there. We didn't dictate it. So which type of projects suit automation best? So I like to recommend considering any project that is repetitive in some way. You know, we're trying to think out of the box. How can I make savings here in terms of time and speed and the rest? So the first type that obviously comes to mind will be those trackers or continuous projects, monthlies, quarterlies, yearlies, whatever the cadence. And you're guaranteed then to see a generous ROI. Of course, if your client decides to change the template every single way, that may be different. And we try to discourage that, obviously, because ultimately, the more you say yes to change, the less you're going to be able to automate and ultimately help the client. So, of course, the first time you implement automation, there'll be an investment of some time to set up and prime the pump, but keep the focus on how wonderful life will be with the next wave, when literally that entire deck then gets repopulated in a few minutes. Also bear in mind that automation doesn't have to be all or nothing. So even if a percentage of questions or slides may change over time, you can still automate, let's say, that the core 60, 70, 80% of the project that remains consistent and save yourself 80% of the reporting time. Next up would be multi-market projects, where the same deck needs to be replicated across a series of regions or countries, and a flexible approach to automation can handle varying bandwidths, like Susan mentioned, that change between markets or segments, and therefore the automation can be set to handle and adjust the slides and charts based on those variations. Segmentation studies are another area, typically where the same set of slides are repeated over and over across different segments, products, brand, or category, whatever it may be, and set up the automation to then take that core set of slides and then replicate them. But again, Susan mentioned that idea where she had 2 core slides, but she needed to end up with 102 of them. So again, we can handle that sort of variation between segments very well. But it's sort of having that antenna, looking for what could I automate here? What can I shave off in terms of the likely turnaround time? And now for just a slight variation on the conference theme of driving innovation. Does anyone here use Power BI or Tableau? Yeah, I do. And they struggle with dashboards where you can't export to editable charts in PowerPoint or even in Google. It's because natively those solutions and many other dashboards out there don't offer editable exports. So now we understand the concept of fully automated reporting, as we've just seen before, based on static reports. How about leveraging that same technology to obtain automatic, on-demand, editable exports from online dashboards? So it's the same principle. You need to have a what we call a template, and you need to have data coming in. So in this case, rather than being banner tables in Excel or SPSS, your dashboard here is providing that data dynamically. Using our API, we can pull data from those dashboards into our cloud-based automation platform that then populates a predefined template in PowerPoint or Google Slides that matches up with the dashboard. Then a few seconds later, whoever asked for it gets an email back with an attachment, open up the PowerPoint deck, or might be a link that's Google, and there you go. That same dashboard we saw before is now sitting here in PowerPoint and is fully editable. But it's the same principle of merging data into a predefined template. And this API is not just restricted to Tableau or Power BI. You can potentially use the same API on your own systems if you have, or end-to-end platforms, and therefore add value and flexibility to your deliverables. So that's what I mean by fully automated reporting. Rather than just being handed a bunch of charts and then still having to spend ages fine-tuning the outputs. To summarize, there are several strategic values to automated reporting. Automation gives you the chance to add value to what you've been doing till now, but now you can do it better. You can do more of it for less cost and faster turnaround. Automation creates time. So you have both the bandwidth and the headspace to utilize analytical skills to dig for additional and more deeper insights. You can enhance the range of deliverables that you offer to clients, generate more revenue, maintain or grow profits. Smaller teams can in particular, can begin to consider pitching on much larger, more complex projects than they ever would have thought of previously, because they've now got the toolkit to be able to deliver on that. They didn't have the resources previously, now they can. Innovating your client reporting strengthens relationships with clients, no doubt about that. It could well make the difference between keeping a client or losing a client or project, or the difference between becoming stale in a client's eyes or making tangible changes that will be mutually beneficial and promote you to being their partner rather than just another supplier. And finally, even staff appreciate automation. Instead of exercising their fingers, preparing chart decks and having to check all their manual data entries, they can finally exercise their minds and be more creative. And it's less stressful too, with more confidence in the accuracy of their reporting. So their increased job satisfaction is then translated into a happier team and a happier company. So that's it from me and Susan. Thank you very much.